Hello everyone, today we're going to be reading some more video game design for dummies by a Wiley brand. This is to improve, 1, my ability to read, 2, to actually cultivate reading as a skill that I want to be doing or a habit, and 3, to improve the way I articulate. This is entirely inspired by Kai Cenat, so a massive shout out to him. Last we left off on page 27. Now I will digress. I have read a little bit into this already, but I will really quickly reread what I've just done. I just reread the first page, so we're going to go from designing with flow in mind. We're going to set a 20-minute timer. The time right now for me is really close to my bedtime, but that's okay. It is currently 21:49, so let's get into it so I can head to bed and yeah, we're going to have a good time. So let's set the 20-minute timer, and off we go. Designing with flow in mind. Flow is that sweet spot where players are totally absorbed in the game, feeling like they're in control and making progress. If you've ever been absorbed into a game for hours on end, and it makes it feel like no time has passed, you were in the flow. The last game that made me feel this way was Factorio. 7 hours gone in no time, and I've only built part of the factory. To make flow happen, you'll want to balance the challenge with the player's skill level and keep core actions uninterrupted. Some ways to design with flow in mind are as follows. Keep the gameplay steady to avoid frustrations like Keep the gameplay steady and avoid frustrating slowdowns, like loading screens or excessive tutorials. Design challenges that match the player's skill level, gradually increasing difficulty as they get better. Allow uninterrupted moments in which players can fully focus on the task with minimal distractions from UI or other elements. Designing around constraints. What makes designs work? Constraints and rules. I've used tons of game engines like GameMaker, Phaser, Unity, Unreal Engine, and more to create games. I've been part of more than 15 game jams and organized around 5 for big teams. I've learned that creating is way more fun when you have only a few ways to do something, not a million different choices. Heard of analysis paralysis. Now I just want to have a look at what a game jam is. I got an idea about what it might be, but what is a game jam? I assume it's like a time-limited thing to create games. Reddit forum for game jams. r/game jams says that game jams are accelerated game development events where participants make a game in a short amount of time, an hour to a day to a week. Cool. Yeah, very, very cool. Makes you work fast. I think that's an interesting concept to move from like thinking to creating and producing. I think that's a really good idea. Construct 2 is one of my favorite engines. Construct 2 is one of my favorite engines besides Unity, of course, because I've used it so much. Construct 2 is great because it is a block-based visual scripting tool. Not sure what that means necessarily. Making it easy to quickly create things without needing to learn complicated language. Most of the interactions you can make are simple if-then triggers. Nothing fancy, which creates a lot of constraints with the limited system. But the results are quick, efficient, and delightful. So I wanted to just have a look at what Construct 2, so a block-based visual scripting tool. Construct 2. Construct 2. So what am I looking at here? A block-based visual scripting tool. Okay. Construct 2. Look, there's a Construct 3 now. But what is it? Construct 3? Construct Animate? Okay, interesting. World's Best 2D Game Engine. No programming required. Okay. JavaScript programming optional. Power and speed. Okay, interesting. It seems to be used a lot for it feels like platformers, but I'm seeing some other examples here as well. For 3D. Now, I'm not too sure what it means by block-based, but construct as a game engine. Let's just have a look on Wikipedia. HTML5 2D based game engine, non-programmers. Okay, interesting. Construct 2. Python scripting was retired, citing complications with running Python in browsers generally. Okay. Steam version. Construct 3. Most recent major update. And that's on 2015 is the most recent update? My goodness. Mac Linux support. Yeah, okay. I'm still not exactly sure what it means by a block-based visual scripting tool. Other than maybe that, I'm not sure like what block means. Like what is a block? What is like a block-based? Block-based visual scripting tool. I suppose it'd be a scripting language, but like what does scripting mean? Block-based coding. Let's have a look. University of York. Block-based coding works by dragging together... I get it now. Blocks of code, programs do things with a range of different things. Okay, so it's like Scratch. With Scratch, you can like set things, and then you can like put that block of code inside another block. It like eats it, and it becomes part of a big block. That's what it means by block-based scripting code. Right. So it's like Scratch. Okay. That makes sense to me. See, now that makes sense to me. Okay, moving onwards. Sorry you spent so much time thinking about that. Think of the most complicated software you can. Maybe it has a ton of features and a complicated system for designing something. The result? A lot of designers get stuck or just give up because it's daunting and just too much to learn. Alternatively, think of Figma, a design tool that has very few buttons and tools outside of the plugin community, but designers are able to make a ton of with what's there. What is Figma? Again, this is another thing which I'm not familiar with. Figma. Oh, that's not what I want to see. Figma and design and build with AI. It's never what you want to see. Fuck AI. Fuck AI. Figma. This looks like a website, like development thing. Yeah, I don't know necessarily what. I don't really care. Honestly, I want to keep reading. I don't really care. I went off on this tangent on design tools because, just like with the product decisions in these design tools, I went off on a tangent on design tools because, just like with the product decisions in these design tools, you'll need to make similar decisions around... Okay, battery's getting low. I need to charge it. You'll need to make similar decisions around constraints in your game's design. For example, when I was part of a team designing a quest system for a mobile game, we needed to make a choice on how those quests showed up on the user interface. We decided to only show 3 quests on screen at a time, because this game was on a mobile device. We needed to have enough space on the screen to display all the info for each quest in a legible size, while also not taking up too much of the screen. This constraint allowed us to uncover some new questions to answer. Does the quest expire over time to allow other quests to pop up? Do quests pop up on screen immediately after completing another quest? If we have X types of quest and only Y spots, what types of quest can be active at the same time? Remember, in the end, less really is more. Constraints make designing your game easier because they confine, not continue, the number of problems you'll have to solve to reach a finished product. Navigating legal and ethical considerations, okay. When it comes to creating games, you'll need to be aware of both legal and ethical guidelines to make sure you're on the right side of the law. This means dealing with stuff like intellectual property, contracts, privacy laws, and compliance with international standards. You'll also need to consider implications of game content and ensure it adheres to age ratings and content guidelines. Warning. The legal landscape for game development can be tricky. For example, when I worked on a global game that collected player data, The team and I had to follow data collection laws from different countries. When you launch a game at scale, you'll need to start thinking about compliance across countries. Thankfully, the app stores keep you up to date on your documents and raise any updates to law across countries. You'll just have to keep these up to date once you've launched your game, otherwise the app stores will make your game unavailable until it's fixed. This is a warning again, yeah. Why does all this matter? Because staying legal builds trust. If players know you're handling their data responsibly and sticking to privacy rules, they'll feel safer playing your game. And keeping to age ratings and content guidelines, that keeps you out of hot water with angry parents and regulators. Remember, you don't need to be an expert in this domain, but it's helpful to be aware of the legal implications of your work to protect your creations, avoid litigation, and ensure a fair marketplace for producers and consumers of games. Understanding laws that protect your work. When you're making games, you want to make sure no one steals your hard work. That's why we're understanding intellectual property. That's where understanding intellectual property or IP comes in. Here's the rundown on how to protect what's yours. Copyright law helps safeguard your game's original content, like code, art, music, and more. Patents can protect unique game mechanics or inventions. Trademarks help protect your game's name and branding. Copyright law helps protect things like your game's code, graphics, music, and story. It stops others from using your content without permission, and it keeps you from accidentally stepping on someone else's toes and copyrights. If you're licensing content, like adding a cool song or borrowing art, you need to get the right permissions to avoid a legal mess. Copyright gives you the exclusive rights to reproduce your work, distribute it, perform or display it, make spin-offs or sequels. Interesting, okay. Trademarks are for branding. When you trademark something, you're saying, this is mine and no one else can use it to confuse my players or mess with my brand. Make sure to double check that no one else already has the rights to your game's name, or you could end up in a costly battle. Also check to see whether the domain is available. Trademarks protect things like your game's title, character names, logos, catchy slogans like "It's a me, Mario." Patents protect your ideas or inventions. In gaming, this could be a unique game mechanic, a system, or a special way of playing. For example, if you invent a brand new way to swing a sword in VR, you may be able to patent it. Tip: getting a patent is a long and complicated process, so I recommend consulting a legal expert to see if it's worth pursuing for your invention. I've gotten 2 patents dealing with haptics in augmented reality, and both took around a year to get registered, and that was through a company that had experience creating new inventions. Protect your game if you plan on it being a business. Sure, the legal stuff isn't the most fun, or maybe even a top priority, but it's the foundation for building a successful game. And make sure to think about registering your work, and it's got a copyright.gov link, considering registering your game's title, logo, and any original art or music to protect your intellectual property. Fair use, and there's a fairuse.stanford.edu link. Understand when you can use others' content like music or video clips without violating copyright laws, and speak with a lawyer about your specific needs when you start getting serious about your game or protecting your property. You may want to start thinking about this if you're going into a partnership with another game developer, you're planning on monetizing your game. Warning: get agreements in writing. If you're collaborating with others, make sure you have contracts that outline who owns what and what happens if things go wrong, because things do go wrong sometimes, and written agreements can make sorting out the mess easier. Tip: a lawyer can help you create contracts to use when you're working with someone else. My most frequent contract is the Agreement for Performance of Services by Independent Contractor. You can find these templates on the internet. You can find templates on the internet for this as well, but I prefer to utilize my lawyer in case I ever need to call for backup, since they're familiar with my legal arrangements. In the case you can't find a video game specific lawyer, a startup lawyer can be helpful in this department as well. Learning ethical game design practices. As a game designer, you should think about the impact your game has on players and society and what you want to contribute to the world. Ethical game design involves creating fair, inclusive, and respectful content that doesn't exploit or harm players. Here are some things to consider. Fair monetization. Design in-game purchases and advertising that's balanced and doesn't exploit players with predatory tactics. If you make players pay to complete the core loop, you have just made your game pay to win. Not cool. Player safety. Prioritize player safety by considering potential issues like addiction, mental health impacts, and age-appropriate content. It can make sense to make players aware of potentially triggering content if you are choosing to include it. Mindful representation. Ensure diverse, respectful, and accurate representation of characters and communities in your game. If you want to include people from a particular background, take the time to research and consult with people from that background to avoid misrepresentation or cultural appropriation. I do want to check this. I'm not cultural... I don't actually know the definition of cultural appropriation, so I want to look it up. So Cambridge Dictionary for appropriation, the act of taking something for your own use, usually without permission, the act of taking something such as an idea, custom or style from a group or culture that you are not a member of and using it yourself. Okay, so... Okay. Okay. Okay, the emergence of global... Okay, interesting. So what is cultural appropriation? Okay. Cultural appropriation refers to adopting customs, practices, ideas, or other elements of a practice or people, community, society inappropriately, or without prior acknowledgement. The practice is usually done by a dominant group of culture, of people or culture, appropriating elements. Okay. I still don't quite understand what appropriation means. Let me read that again. So appropriation is the act of taking something, like an idea or custom, from a group that you're not a member of and using it yourself. So if I were to take something from like the black community and use it for myself, that would be appropriation, I think. But and why is that a bad thing? Is it because those things belong to those communities? I think it is. I think it's because those things belong to those communities, and especially as me as like a white man in that example, taking it from those communities would be like oppressing those communities without giving them their proper due diligence, I suppose, I think. Takes away from cultural elements without acknowledging or giving credit. Right, so if the thing you're appropriating comes from a community, you want to say it's from that community and you're inspired by it, or you're using it from that community even though you're not a part of it, because it gives homage to the community that you come to. So it's not a problem. Right, so, right, okay. Cultural appropriation versus cultural appreciation, right. So if you're appropriating something, it's disrespectful. You're oppressing a marginalized or radicalized group, versus appreciating, which is to seek learning, meaningful stories. Okay, I think I get it a little bit more now. So if you were to say appropriate someone's work, if say like a filmmaker appropriated the work of an author, that would be bad because they're taking the work of someone else and not giving credit to it. Versus appreciating that work would be using that other person's work as a inspiration for their own and giving homage to the original work. I believe that is the case. Okay, I think I've learned about what cultural appropriation is. Okay, so that's what I wasn't sure about. So I wasn't sure about, like, why is appropriating bad? Appropriating is bad because it's not giving homage or praise or recognition to the original work. And it becomes appreciation if you do that and you're, like, you know, asking for permission, being respectful about it. Right. Because I didn't realize it kind of shifted, that like the bad version was appropriation and the good version was appreciation. That's where I was confused. I was like, why is appropriating something bad if it's taking something that you wouldn't normally have and using it for yourself. It's bad because that person... Hey guys, sorry, my shit died. The timer was about 30 seconds left on it. Sorry about that. See you in the next video. Again, thank you so much to Kai. Yeah. Good night.